ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here, and welcome to a Metal Gear Solid 5 analysis. Today, I want to analyze the intro cutscene of the 30 minutes gameplay presentation that Kojima Productions released recently for public viewing. I'll be analyzing the gameplay later. For now, I just want to focus on the intro cutscene, as it provides a number of interesting story and gameplay details that I want to get out of the way separately. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. The cutscene itself is essentially an elongated version of the scene we saw in last year's E3 trailer with a few different camera angles. And like in last year's trailer, Snake doesn't utter a word, with Ocelot doing all the talking. Now, some of what he says at the beginning is a bit muffled due to the sandstorm, so here are some subtitles for the dialogue for those who can't hear what he's saying.
The area ahead is under total Soviet control.
According to Ocelot, this Afghanistan area is under total Soviet control. For those who don't know, between 1979 and 1989, there was a real-life historical conflict in Afghanistan known as the Soviet War in Afghanistan, in which the multinational Muslim groups known as the Mujahideen insurged and fought against Afghanistan's Soviet-backed government. Phantom Pain takes place in 1984, during which the conflict between the Soviets and the Mujahideen was well underway, which would explain the Soviet presence in this location of Afghanistan. Now, in the Metal Gear lore, Ocelot actually partook in this historical event. He became a member of the Spetsnaz GRU before his involvement with Diamond Dogs, and he actually participated in the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. It was during this time that Ocelot received the nickname Shalashaska amongst the Mujahideen, who feared Ocelot's sadistic tendencies, especially as a torturer. It was also during his time in the Soviet military that Ocelot met Sergei Gorlukovich, father to Olga Gorlukovich, grandfather to Sonny, and a key player of both the Shadow Moses incident and the Manhattan incident. Now, it wasn't until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 that Ocelot left the Spetsnaz GRU, so if lore holds true, Ocelot should still be undercover with the Soviets during Phantom Pain, which is perhaps why he knows so much about the circumstances in Afghanistan.
Miller's been captive for 10 days.
Moving on, Ocelot mentions that Miller's been captured for 10 days. It's really hard to say how long it's been between this scene in Afghanistan and Big Boss's awakening in the hospital, but considering Big Boss managed to build himself back to shape, get himself a kick-ass new prosthetic arm, and get his army and base up and running before the mission, I'm going to assume that it's been a while. Here's how I think events unfolded. After Ocelot rescued Big Boss from the hospital, Big Boss was taken back to the new base that Kaz had been working on during his slumber, and together Big Boss and Kaz named their group Diamond Dogs, although it's also possible that Kaz came up with the name prior to Big Boss's awakening.
You see this? Diamond Dogs. Our new home.
After all that, he likely underwent physical therapy for a few weeks while Kaz stayed in charge until he fully recovered. As Big Boss was nearing full recovery, Kaz initiated an operation in Afghanistan that resulted in his captivity and the death of his bodyguards. Then, sometime during Kaz's 10 days of captivity, Big Boss became fit enough to resume his duties as leader of the group and as the legendary soldier, and his first mission becomes the rescue of his right-hand man Kaz from the Soviet-occupied Afghanistan, which brings us to this cutscene. This is just my guess for the most likely way that events unfolded. If you have any other ideas, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Not much time left.
Moving on, we can hear the iDroid, voiced by Sins of the Father singer Donna Burke, report the following.
The weather will clear shortly.
Those who've watched the entire demo will know that this isn't just a cutscene feature. The iDroid will warn players of incoming weather changes as players traverse Phantom Pain's vast open worlds. It's one of the iDroid's many new features.
Storm's passing.
Lo and behold, the weather clears just as the iDroid anticipated. Big Boss proceeds by taking off his goggles, which he oddly enough doesn't wear during gameplay when a sandstorm kicks in, so the goggles could just be a cutscene thing, or a customization option at most. We are then shown Big Boss struggling to pick up the water bottle that Ocelot hands him, suggesting that he still hasn't fully gotten used to the prosthetic arm, further corroborating my theory that it's only recently that Big Boss finished some kind of physical therapy. Big Boss's struggle with a prosthetic arm could also suggest that the arm was a late addition, since I'm sure it takes some time to functionalize and calibrate something like that, even by MGS standards. Now, I'm not sure if Snake drinking water is just a cutscene thing, or if it will actually serve a purpose during gameplay. The reason I'm contemplating the possibility is because a water bottle is actually attached onto Snake during the entire gameplay presentation. Then again, it could just be an aesthetic thing for Snake's model, considering that Snake already has a water bottle on him, even as Ocelot hands him his. Furthermore, a gameplay feature involving the water bottle doesn't get shown or mentioned once throughout the entire gameplay presentation, and I see no reason why they would refrain from discussing such a feature, so I think the safest assumption to make, at least for now, is that the water bottle is just aesthetics.
Getting used to it?
And there's the beautiful landscape of the Afghanistan desert. Now, many of you noted that the lighting in this footage is different compared to last year's trailer. That likely has to do with the fact that the game features a day and night cycle system and a real-time weather system, which means that lighting conditions can vary for each player. Also, there is the possibility that players can start missions in a time of their choosing, so perhaps the gameplay footage begins sometime later in the afternoon, while the footage filmed for the trailer begins closer to the morning. Moving on, I would like for you to listen to Ocelot's words closely, since they confirm when this mission takes place.
After 9 years on ice, solo infiltration of the Soviet main ground forces should be the perfect warm-up.
As you heard, this is Big Boss's warm-up after being 9 years on ice. In other words, this is Big Boss's first mission since he gained consciousness from his coma. And as mentioned before, it's likely been a few weeks since the hospital scene, considering how long it would take to bring Big Boss back into shape and to get his new group and base up and running. You know, it would be perfect if they made Phantom Pain's intro sequence a montage showing the weeks Big Boss spends struggling through his physical therapy. I don't know, just a thought. Anyways, the scene continues as Ocelot hands Big Boss the iDroid, which makes a glorious return from Ground Zeroes. Now, if we flip the video horizontally here, we can clearly see that this is iDroid version 3.02, a significant upgrade over Ground Zeroes' version 1.02. We also get a small glimpse of the map, which as seen throughout the gameplay is absolutely humongous.
Normally there would be a tutorial here, but we'll go ahead and skip that for today.
Ocelot then says something interesting.
He can't have much left in him. I give him 3 days tops.
A real possibility is that his dialogue hints at missions in Phantom Pain having time limits, which would go quite nicely with the day and night cycle system. It would also bring the game closer to a stealth simulator, considering that real-life stealth missions have a period of time in which they can be accomplished. Moving on, I would like for you to pay close attention to Ocelot's next bit of dialogue.
If we fail, and he dies, we lose our chance of revenge.
Notice how he says, we lose our chance at revenge, instead of, you lose your chance at revenge. Ocelot is including himself in Diamond Dog's cause. I can't say for sure why Ocelot is on a path for revenge, since he was mostly absent from Peace Walker and Ground Zeroes, but then again, Ocelot has always looked up to Big Boss and regarded him highly, so perhaps the attempt on Big Boss's life really pissed Ocelot off.
But we need more intel.
In his next bit of dialogue, Ocelot discusses Snake's first objective for his mission.
If you just go charging into Dehar, you'll be putting both your lives at risk. See what you can find out first.
The overall mission might be to rescue Kaz, but there will be a number of steps and objectives involved, one of which is to obtain intel in regards to his location. Expect most missions in Phantom Pain to be split into a variety of objectives, and as Kojima has mentioned time after time, players will be able to choose how, where, and when to tackle these objectives to accomplish a mission.
The Soviets have other outposts, not just the one you saw.
Ocelot then mentions that there are a number of Soviet outposts scattered across Afghanistan. In other words, don't expect to just guess where Kaz is being held. At least for the first playthrough, players will likely have to gather intel, as Ocelot suggested, if they expect to rescue Kaz in time. The various outposts also suggest that players can expect to play a variety of missions in Afghanistan, both main ops and side ops. Don't expect to just rescue Kaz and never see Afghanistan again. If you recall, the E3 2013 trailer introduces Quiet and these disfigured super soldiers in Afghanistan, and the E3 2014 trailer shows Quiet in captivity in what is likely one of the Soviet outposts located in Afghanistan. The latest trailer also shows what looks like some kind of invasion taking place in Afghanistan. So bottom line, there will likely be a lot to do in Afghanistan and in other locations found in the game.
Afghanistan is a big place. I expect you'll become quite familiar with those binoculars as you plan your next move.
The binoculars, as we are all very familiar with from Ground Zeroes, reward players for scouting the area by allowing them to mark targets and place markers on the map. So this is Ocelot's way of reminding players to take advantage of this feature, especially now that players are dealing with much larger open worlds.
How and where you make it, well, that's up to you.
Ocelot also reminds Snake and players that they can approach missions and objectives any way they please at any time of the day, instead of confined to tackling linear areas the way developers intended, like in past games.
From here on out, you're on your own. You're a legend in the eyes of those who live on the battlefield. That's why you have to handle this mission yourself. Put those 9 years behind you, and return as Big Boss.
The legend, known as Big Boss, has been gone for 9 years, with many likely assuming that he has lost his edge. Tackling this mission alone seems to be a way to prove to those who live in the battlefield that he has still got what it takes to live up to the legend, and that age hasn't slowed him down one bit. I think this scene from last year's trailer showing Big Boss and Kaz coming back home together will be a powerful image for Diamond Dog soldiers that will prove that the man has returned as Big Boss.
That's how Kaz would want it. I'll be sending additional intel by radio.
In this mission, Ocelot will be Snake's main contact for intel. It's hard to say whether that will hold true for future missions once Kaz is rescued. Hopefully, Big Boss will have multiple codec contacts at a time like in previous games.
Stay sharp. Not one of Miller's bodyguards survived. And they were good. All we found on the scene were their corpses.
According to Ocelot, the site in which Kaz and his bodyguards were ambushed has been checked out already, and that mostly all they found were corpses. I think it's highly likely that these corpses were brought back to Mother Base for a proper funeral ceremony, which is perhaps exactly what is being shown in this footage from the E3 2014 trailer.
And these. You'll be missing them. And you're his only hope of getting them back.
We also learned that Kaz's sunglasses were found amongst the corpses, which explains why Kaz didn't have them on him when Big Boss finally rescues him. Ending the cutscene is one last quote from Ocelot.
Now go! Let the legend come back to life.
Once again, Ocelot tells Big Boss that it's time for him to prove to those who live in the battlefield that he is still the legend he once was, and that the legend, once thought to be dead, has come back to life. It's a great place to start in terms of regaining his influence after being gone for nearly a decade. Now, something that I never noticed until now is that Ocelot's introduction shot from last year's E3 trailer comes from this exact scene. Not only do they make the exact same hand gesture from the exact same location, but also you will notice that if I take the audio from the cutscene and combine it with this shot from last year's trailer, the lip syncing matches perfectly.
Now go! Let the legend come back to life.
Speaking of the hand gesture, it seems as though his hand gesture from his younger days has been replaced with his new one. I know some of you may be thinking that it's possible this hand gesture is just a one-time thing for this cutscene, but if we look at this footage from the gameplay presentation, you will notice that Ocelot does the exact same hand gesture, so it doesn't seem to be a one-time thing. If I had to guess, I would say that Ocelot will use this new hand gesture for most of Phantom Pain. Thus, the cutscene ends, and with that, I would like to end this analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Now that I've analyzed the cutscene portion of the footage, stay tuned as I analyze the gameplay portion. And if you haven't done so yet, to be further updated on Metal Gear Solid 5, be sure to join the NASIAN and subscribe to Young Gear. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, and Young out.
Words that